It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Yes, it is the Real Estate Breakfast with another update on the Australian housing property market, as heard on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, from Perth to Penrith and all of those markets in between. And remember, we're not trying to sell you something. We're not talking property listings, only the property insights and data and market trends from week to week. And we do have a brand new week, don't we? Monday, August the 17th. And good morning to Melanie in Noosa on the Sunshine Coast. Great to have received your email, Melanie, regarding buying your first property. Now, you've been an avid listener, you say, for over 2 years, and currently saving while living with your parents. That's a great way to do it. And you say that you have heard many different takes on fixing a mortgage versus having a variable loan. You ask, can you or one of your experts offer a definitive answer in this current real estate market cycle? Well, that is a great question, Melanie, and one that we have had before. You might have heard me talk last year suggesting that maybe now was the time when the interest rate was starting to go down to fix your mortgage rate if you were on a limited budget, and that's the point there. If there is no wiggle room in that household budget, that can answer this in a different way than if you've got a little bit more wiggle room in the household budget. Now, I've got Margaret coming up in just a moment, and she has been in the property market for a long, long time. So I'm going to put your question, Melanie, to her. And also regional markets. Are you buying into one of the regional markets or considering one? And where are the best regional markets right now? We'll also find out that with Margaret. Now, here's something that happened to me over the weekend. If you're looking at buying into an apartment and perhaps you want to compare two different apartment buildings, I just did a preliminary on two different buildings because I wanted to find out some of the comments around the property management of both buildings. I also wanted to find out the quality of the build. As I say, this is just a preliminary. I was amazed at how much information comes up from AI, and it really gets into the detail.
We are just as addicted to property as you are.
Yeah, so let's go to Margaret Lomas from Destiny Solutions in Sydney, because I want to pick your brain here, Margaret, for the best regional market right now for first home buyers. What's your suggestion?
Well, my suggestion is to try and stay as close to those capital cities as possible, because what typically happens is when a capital city starts to moderate or fall in value, people become more willing to live a little bit further away from that capital city and even start to touch on the regions, as long as they don't feel like they're so far away that they can't get back. And I'm talking places like the Central Coast in New South Wales, where people do commute, and something like 60% of the working population on the Central Coast commute to Sydney for a job every single day, but the Central Coast is still a regional area. Those people will commute an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes each way every day, either on the train or in their car, and yet there are still some suburbs on the Central Coast that are highly affordable for first home buyers, and it's a big population in a very resourced area with plenty of shopping malls and everything that you need. It's not like you go to come here and suddenly find yourself in an area where you can't even go to the movies on the weekend. Plenty of restaurants, plenty of what you need. So using that theory, if you go around the country, then I think Melbourne, and we are starting to see auction clearance rates in Melbourne get that little bit better. And I think because Melbourne's just come through the doldrums, we're getting a little bit more interest back in Melbourne. So now we're talking the peninsula in Melbourne and Frankston and a little bit south of that. Still highly commutable, and also the areas around Geelong and just a little bit further out from Geelong and Sunbury that are considered to be regional type areas, but they're more connected back to their capital cities. If we're looking at Brisbane, areas like Ipswich and Toowoomba are both seeing a pretty good moderation in prices, fairly affordable in many of their suburbs, and great opportunities for people who still want to have that connection back into the main city, but want to be able to go out to the regions.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of these first home buyers, they almost give up thinking that there is no other area regionally that they can go to that is commutable, as you say, to a larger city. And they just don't get into actually buying property. So for that very reason, make sure that you are checking on those regions that Margaret has just highlighted, because they do exist. You just have to think about the research, find out a little bit more about them, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Now, this leads me into, recently I was talking about banks and the economists from banks with relation to variable loans versus fixed. You're kind of trying to figure out what the economists from these banks are doing. My argument is, can these economists long term, because that's what they're doing when they're looking at the fixed rate, can economists really predict what happens next in the property market with outside global influences, especially with Trump and Trump's brain? I mean, it is a very unpredictable brain that he has got.
And they absolutely cannot predict, and nobody can predict. And what an economist does is they use all of the information that they have today about all of the world economics everywhere. So they use what they know about oil prices, what they know about conflicts, what they know about present decisions being made by presidents of other countries, and what they know about the Australian economy. And they use that to form a picture or a view, and it's only a view, not a prediction, on what they think will happen in the future. And that's how they inform the banks that they work for on what they should be doing with rates. But the thing about economists is usually, I think there's a great stat, 50% of the time they're right and 50% of the time they're wrong. So, like anyone, they're taking their chances. They do have a more informed view. That's absolutely true. But their view can absolutely change tomorrow the moment there's an unexpected decision made elsewhere that impacts on the world economy and ripples back into Australia. I mean, we also have China making big decisions that do impact back on our economy. Nobody seems to talk about that because we're also caught up in the guy over in the east there from us, the guy over there who's making all these wild decisions on the spot. Everybody forgets about the China's influence back in Australia. So an economist can't predict it. My experience is that sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong, just like anybody. And if you're thinking about whether you should go fixed or variable, in the entire time that I've been advising people on how to buy property, which is well over 30 years now, there's only been one period of time where taking a fixed rate was the best way to go, and I think that was just after the GFC, and it was a very small window where fixed rates were considerably lower than the variable. Generally, a fixed rate will be higher than a variable because the bank is always going to make more money out of those fixed rates. And if they're lower than the variable, the bank still thinks they're going to make money out of that fixed rate. So my advice is that generally speaking, most of the time, a variable works out better than a fixed rate works out.
You know, the other thing too, with regard to a fixed rate, a lot of people don't think about the breaking that fixed rate and paying the penalty, because depending on where the market is, it may be well in your interest to do that, you know, because people think, well, I'm currently on the fixed rate, I can't change it. Yes, you can, obviously.
Absolutely. The break costs generally add up to what the bank's going to lose by switching you over. The other thing people don't seem to think about is they might take a fixed rate for, say, 3 years, and that fixed rate might be higher than the variable, and it might take a year and a half for that fixed rate to be better than the variable because the variable's gone up. But for that first year and a half, they paid more, so that for the second year and a half, they can pay less. And at the end of the day, they work out to be the same, but they've taken a risk in fixing it. So you've really got to calculate over the entire term of whatever your fixed rate is, what would happen and how much behind you are in the beginning and how many months of that variable being below your fixed it needs to be in order to make up for the extra that you pay. It's a very complex calculation, and I warn most people, don't try it at home.
Yeah, anything to do with numbers around housing and property, always complex. You mentioned China. Just before I let you go, the amount of these electric cars coming into Australia from from China and being so highly spec'd. I mean, they've got everything in them. They're nowhere near the cost of these high-end European Mercedes, BMW cars, and they're killing the market at the moment. I think that they're now, from a manufacturer point of view, I think they're number one in the world.
Well, look, at the risk of getting my house egged, I've just bought one. And I've come from being a Lexus owner for many, many years because Lexus have always been premium feel, premium drive. So I was concerned. My last Lexus I did hold for a considerable period of time. I'm talking 12 years because I loved it so much. I've just gone into a BYD. My husband says it looks like Lexus and Porsche had a baby, so it looks sleek. It is amazing, the tech in this thing, because I'm a bit of a tech head myself. I love technology. The tech in this thing is ridiculous. The drive is beautiful. It's so specced out, and it was mid 50,000s to buy, as opposed to had I wanted to switch up to another Lexus, then I would have been paying very close to double that. And I couldn't see why I would do that. I find it very easy to drive. I come home, I don't drive a lot, so every week or two I just plug it into the power point and it's charged again. I'm actually loving it, Craig. I hate to admit, and I know there's a lot of people out there who have got a lot of negative things to say about an electric vehicle, but the Chinese have got it sorted. They're churning out these fabulous pieces of technology that are great to drive. The safety features are incredible, which I need now that I'm getting older.
Well, before what happened with the Iranian war, I was of the feeling that I would never buy an electric car. I would stay with a combustible engine or maybe a hybrid, but I've never owned a hybrid car. Now with what has happened with the Iranian war, I am now looking at buying my first electric car, and primarily because the prices are never going to go back at the Bowser where they were before this war. And I can see that this is going to be a long-term thing. I know that there's a lot of people like me that are thinking, yes, okay, time now to switch to electric. Just a question on that, is yours a hybrid or full electric?
Full electric, but I did come from a hybrid, so I'd driven a hybrid for 12 years, and some could say that I had that transition. I went from an ICE car into my hybrid, drove my hybrid for 12 years, and always like that, but it wasn't a plug-in hybrid, so it really was just a, regen braking type hybrid that I got more kilometres out of than your standard petrol engine. And now I've gone full electric, and I'm not sorry. And I'm looking every day for an excuse to go somewhere so I can get in it and drive it.
Yeah, that's a really good plug. And by the way, this is not an advertisement for BYD. This is just where we have landed this morning talking about electric cars. Good stuff, Margaret. Well, enjoy your BYD today. Thanks for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast. Talk again soon.
Okay, thank you.
We don't just report on real estate news, we take you to the source of the information. We produce more property podcasts every week than anyone else. We are your trusted guide for all things real estate.
Buyers felt that they had to act immediately or risk being priced out. That is a completely different psychology now.
It certainly is. No longer do we have FOMO or that fear of missing out. Days on market is increasing, and a lot of vendors are not willing to accept a lower price. And in fact, we're also seeing sales volumes decline. And if a buyer does not meet the expectations of a seller, we're often seeing properties being pulled from the market.
Brisbane's supply position has changed, as in what you're talking about. Back in February, total stock available for sale was about 25% below the 5-year average. Now it is around 6% above that average.
Yes, it's always a positive thing actually when buyers have more choice. We're now in a market where properties are listed for sale. Buyers have time to consider their options because there's more options that are available, and they have time to complete thorough due diligence.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.